Welcome to the Melanin Jelly Project Conversations, a podcast that celebrates diversity and representation in children's storytelling, entertainment, and edutainment. I am the host, Olunosen Louisa Ivaze. On this podcast, I chat with authors and creators of children's books, entertainment, and edutainment. This is also a collaboration with the Ottawa Black Book Club. Welcome
Thank you so
Andrea
much.
Coke, the author of this lovely book, of the MORNINGSTAR series.
Yes.
We have Carnival Girl.
Yes.
So thank you, Andrea. Thank you for sending us your lovely book.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
I'm
really excited to be here today and chat with you.
So go ahead, Andrea. Tell me about yourself and what inspired you to write this book.
Absolutely. I've always been writing all my life, and when I was in school and when I had free time, I've got binders and journals all over the house of things that I've written. And then a couple of years ago, I just decided, I really want to actually publish something that I have written, and I didn't know a lot about what that was going to be like, but I'm an educator. I've been a teacher, a speech language pathologist, and I'm a mother of 4. And so there was just so many experiences and situations that came to mind that I wrote about, and decided, now's the time that I really want to publish some of the stories. So the Molly Morningstar series, the one that we're talking about today, came from incidents and situations with my family, with my kids, with my nieces and nephews and things like that. And I just began to sort of put those on paper. And a couple of years ago, they were written some time ago, but a couple of years ago, I just decided, I'm going to try and publish them.
Oh,
didn't know what that meant.
That's great. So why did you decide to start? Is this the first in the series?
No, the Carnival Girl is actually the second in the series. And so the first book in the series is Molly Morningstar, A Doll for Me. Okay. And I published that one and had some great success with it. I did a Kickstarter for it. And as part of the Kickstarter, I was able to raise enough funds to do Carnival Girl. And that story was, even though I had probably written it before, I brought it on as the second book in the series.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
So I was reading up about you, and something I noted here, because I started my very first proper job, was as an English teacher. Mm-hmm. And that was what inspired me when I went into children's writing to start to write to try to educate children about the continent of Africa.
Yes.
So you said here that there's the assumption about inclusion, about diversity and inclusion in education, but people don't know actually know how to do it.
Yes. Yeah.
Speak to us about that.
As an educator, I would see that you'd see the kids that are sitting in your classroom, and even as a speech pathologist, the students and the kids that I was working with and doing therapy with, all the materials and all the resources that I had to use with them, there was a disconnect that they didn't reflect the students that were before me, and they all had sort of a same story, a little different in some ways, but it was still sort of coming from the same lens. And I feel that in education, there's sometimes this misunderstanding about how to properly do inclusion, how to properly really diversify what you're doing. I like to say that it's not about, sometimes you'll see a book, somebody will say this book is diverse, it's a diverse book, or it's an inclusive book. And I like to really rethink that and think about your collection being diverse, because just because there's a Black child on the cover doesn't mean really that it's a diverse book. But having the ability to have lots of different stories that tell lots of different, that come with characters that are well developed, lots of nuances, that's what I think is missing. And many times I would go in and just, the one time, maybe in February when it's Black History Month here in Canada and in the States too, that they would put out, a table with a few books, and then the month is over and then they put them right back. But they would say, we're being very diverse, we're being very inclusive. And I'm thinking that wasn't enough for me, because they needed to be there. They needed to be accessible. You can't hide them and just only bring them out at one time of the year. They needed to be available for students all times, because it's so important for our kids to be seen. And I grew up reading quite a bit. I was always reading at the dinner table, reading in the car, reading all the time. And though I found lots of different books, I really did not have any books that talked about the kind of lifestyle that I had, the kind of experiences that I had. And that was really missing. And then I found that with my kids also. It got a little better. It's gotten a little better now. There are so many more books out there that reflect different cultures, Caribbean culture, African culture, many different experiences and lifestyles, that it's really, I think that that's such a positive step. But for a long time, there wasn't. And I really wanted to start to bring some books into the space that were just, that my kids could pick up and say, oh, look that's similar to what I went through, or I recognize that, or I identify with that. And other kids too. Again, it's not just, I didn't write books for Black kids or write for only one group. I wrote books that are fun, are funny, that have experiences that kids go through. Kids get disappointed. Yeah, every child gets disappointed, and need to know how to sort of work through some of those experiences. So
okay, that makes a lot of sense, because if I think of I think you're originally from, you put it that you're from Trinidad and Tobago.
I am.
So I want to believe Trinidad and Tobago was also colonized by the British.
Yes.
Because I'm from Nigeria. And
yes.
Yeah, Nigeria was also colonized by the British, so our curriculum is very British. And the material I grew up reading, in it Blytons and all of that, was very British.
Yes.
I didn't see, I read here where you said books that help kids see that they can be a hero of their own story.
Yes.
You don't see children like me as heroes of stories, in stories.
Yeah. Yes.
I didn't see that.
Many times, some of the books that we would see that maybe had a character that whose skin color reflected mine or something like that, it was about these big heroes, people who have led marches and big changes across the society and things like that, that sometimes for kids, we're not all going to be Martin Luther King. We're not all going to have those experiences, right? And that those were the only things that you were seeing, right? Sometimes it's just the child that, in the playground can make a difference with the other kids. They're the hero in that story, right? That they can have friendships with different groups of people and learn some life lessons and some life skills because they lost a bicycle and they figured out how to find it again, or they took in a stray dog and they learned how to take care of it. So some of the basic things that kids go through.
Yeah.
But realizing that it's not only happening with one group of people, but you too, and can go through those, you too can have those same experiences, and you can be the one who shines. That the dialogue is about you, you're leading the dialogue, you're making the decisions, you're moving the action forward. You're not just, someone at the back, a sidekick at somebody else's story. So that's what I really wanted to do. Have characters all the characters that I've written, and maybe one day I'll write about some new characters that are just from my imagination, but all of them are based on either my kids or my nieces or nephews. And you just, as you experience what they're experiencing, situations that they go through or situations I've been through, you see the story in it, and it just begins to sort of tell itself, and you begin to craft it. So when I'm writing, generally I'll have an idea I'll see a situation and I'll think about it, and I might think about it for months and months and months, and I haven't put anything down on paper until it just sort of percolates a bit, and then it's like, oh, okay, I've got the story, I know where this is going, and then I start to write it down. So the writing part doesn't take that long, but it could be months or years that I'm thinking about the story, and I'll leave the stories, and I might not come back to it for months, might come back to it years later, and then go back and see I wrote that's really good, I like that, and there's the next piece to it. So that's how my writing process is.
Okay, because that was the next question I was gonna ask. So talk us through your writing process.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, I really think about the stories. I get an idea, and I think in terms of characters. I start with characters first, then I'll have this idea about a character, and I really like to sort of flesh them out, and with a lot of nuances, a lot of depth to the character. And I start to think about a series, like this character can be in this situation, another situation, and I think about it in that way. But I spend a lot of time just thinking through it in my mind. And then once I sort of have an idea about a situation that I want to write about, I will then start to put it on paper. And I do leave it. I don't edit at the beginning. I just write it out and leave it. And then I might come back. Like I said, it could be weeks, it could be days. Some days I'll just like every hour I'm back at looking at it until it's at a place where I just feel comfortable with it, to leave it for a bit, let it simmer a bit, and I'll start something else. I have lots of manuscripts that have been started that have not been finished because they're still in the process.
Okay.
And but once I get it and I know that, okay, I know where the story's ending,
Okay.
and I get that piece, because sometimes that's the hardest piece for me, is knowing how to end that story. Then I begin to write it. And once I begin to write it, then it's a matter of, you're going through that editing process, which can go on forever and ever. And at a certain point, I just say, is this good enough? Like, would I want this out there? Would I want to show it to somebody? Because that's the hardest part as a writer, right? You just don't, it's hard to put your work out there because you don't know what the feedback is going to be. And I felt that way with my first book. I didn't know what the feedback was going to be, but I felt good about it. So I thought, you know what? I liked it. I felt good about it. I will do it. And then I sent it into my editor, and then you're just like, oh, what's she gonna say? I'm afraid to open the email to see what's gonna come back, because that's a hard part, right, as a writer. And I know you write too, so I know that you understand that. You spend so much time with it, and then when it comes back and she mentions like, okay, let's try this, let's do that, and you're thinking like, oh yeah, this can be improved. We can do that. I can change that and make it a little better. And so that's always a nice piece, until you feel like, okay, I can't do anything more with this. This is what it is.
I think as writers, we are our worst critics.
Yeah.
I don't know why it's that way, but we are our worst. We are our worst critics. Yeah, we are.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you mentioned that the challenge for you sometimes is trying to figure out how a story ends.
Yeah.
I think for me, I am good at knowing how a story starts. I'm fantastic at knowing how it ends. My problem is the middle.
Okay.
Because I originally started writing for adults.
Yes.
So I still have manuscripts, novels that are still happening there, because I have a great beginning, fantastic ending, but the middle I feel it's not good enough. It hasn't got an impact up. So that's the challenge. Even with children's books, I had thought that initially I said, Louisa, you're not a children's author. You're not a children's writer. You can't write children's books. So for me, it was a learning process.
Yeah.
I can sit down, figure out an adult book, and just write.
Yeah.
And I remember when I had written the first draft of my first book, Crowning.
Yes.
It was about 5,000 words.
Mm-hmm.
So I sent it off to an editor, a consultant who looked at it, and
that was for the children's book?
The children's book, because I'm used to writing for adults.
Yes.
So he said to me, the first thing is you need to bring this down to
the word count. Yes.
And I said, how do I tell a story that makes sense in 1,000 words? She said, anything you can reflect in pictures doesn't need to be reflected in words. And remember, you're telling this story to children.
Yeah.
That's the target audience. So for me, it was a learning process. It's a huge learning process for me. And I thought, because it's just 1,500 words, I can write that story in an hour. Not true.
No.
It takes time. I still have some stories that is still hanging there. I know the end, I know the beginning. I'm still trying to figure out the middle.
Yeah. The stories the shorter the story is, I feel the harder it is to write, because every word that you use has to have an impact. It has to belong there. It can't, and that's the hardest piece, is to take out, because as writers you'd like have lovely sentences, and you could write prolifically and it just sounds really great, but then to try and bring that down, it's hard to say something that I could say in a really long sentence with really nice big words and say it in 3 sentences or 3 words. You just feel that that's a hard process, and it is a learning curve. When I first started this, I'm actually glad I didn't know anything about publishing. I didn't know anything about writing a book personally, and I just knew I liked to write, and I was always writing. And then I decided, okay, I'm going to do this. And I didn't know anything about word count. I didn't know anything about structuring a story or anything like that. Even though I did take and if my old professor hears this, she'll wonder, how come you don't know this? Because I did take a Caribbean writing course when I was in university from this author from the Caribbean, Ramamai Espinay. And so I learned a lot about just telling the story, a lot about storytelling in that class, but not how to really structure it in those pieces. And probably had I known some of the work involved with that, I might still be working on just drafts and never get to the step where I've actually said, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and get this published. I'm going to go ahead and move ahead with this. So it is a learning curve, and every day I'm learning. Like as each book comes along, I'm just like, oh, I'm learning something different. I'm learning more. I'm learning from so many other authors, and even just taking all the information you hear from other authors and sort of parceling in it, because not all information is good. And your journey is very different than everyone else's, and there's a tendency to feel like, oh, I got to do this now, or I should do this. Somebody said to do this. Somebody said to write about this. I should write about this. And you want to make sure that you're still staying true to yourself and what you want to do and what your place is, right? My books are not like somebody else's necessarily, and that's okay. And I don't want to start to change them to make them like that because I hear, oh, this person's doing this book like this and they're having such success with this. So it's a matter of taking all of that information that you're hearing and taking all the really good parts about it and learning from other people's mistakes, learning from other people's successes, and trying to continue to make sure that what you're writing and what you're doing is meeting your own needs. And that's been a hard part. That's been a hard part. It's hard not to compare yourself.
I think for me, I went through different kinds of books because first of all, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to write about.
Yes.
How did I start writing for kids? So growing up, I've always written stories, right from childhood.
Yeah.
Story writing has always been too. So even as a kid in, what's it called here? We call it primary school. Is it called grade school or
grade school? Elementary schooler, yeah.
So we call it primary school.
Yes, yeah.
Primary school, I would do comics. I started with comics.
Oh wow.
So I would draw these comics. So and the comics were always about the evil stepmother, and I would take them to school for my friends to read. So I did this through primary school. Then I got into high school. And then I got into reading Mills and Boone, romance, and all that. And then I started to write teenage romance.
Okay.
I would have friends, I would come to school and my friends would be like, Louisa, have you got anything new for us today? So I continued that way. I always knew that I was going to write books.
Yes.
Someday. Children's books, but I decided, my niche is adults. And I had writer's block. Yeah. And I didn't know where to take my stories. So I went, okay, Louisa, you can't just sit without writing these books. Try out children's books. Yeah. And because I started out as a teacher, my goal is, because I taught English comprehension, my goal is always to teach.
Yeah.
I said, what I knew about the books was, I knew that I wanted an informative children's book. I wanted a children's book that had a teaching guide. I wanted a children's book that had an activity book. So I sat and I thought. So the first book I wrote, I had done the book itself and done an activity book. First of all, I didn't know how expensive it was going to be. So first of all, I didn't know how difficult it would be to get traditionally published. I thought that when I submitted my manuscript, all the publishers would be like, wow, Louisa has written. And then the rejection started to come. Yeah. Then I rewrote. And then I decided, you know what? You're going to self-publish. I didn't know how, first of all, finding the kind of illustrator that, yes, my vision. That was one. Two, I didn't know how expensive illustrators are.
Yes.
Three, I didn't know that I didn't know illustrations take a long time.
Yes.
I thought you sit and you just draw in 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the reviewing process.
Yes.
And then there's the text input.
Yes.
And then when you do all of that, even if you decide to self-publish and you printing costs, I didn't know about that. Okay, if you decide not to print and you decide to use Amazon and Ingram Spark, marketing.
Yeah.
Begging people to leave reviews. That is the one. Anyway, I'm guilty of that. I always say I'm going to leave reviews. I'm guilty of that.
Yeah.
Saying I'll take out a day and just write reviews. But begging friends and family, especially, to leave reviews. And you go, but your kid loves that book. Please leave a review.
Yeah. Yeah.
My first book taught me a lot. And then when I did the second one, in fact, my second book, because I had it in English and French. So the second book, I decided not to even do an activity book because that was just an extra cost. And I decided, okay, you know what? Let's just put everything in one book.
Yeah.
So the end notes, the second book has the teaching guide in it.
Oh, okay.
That it has the end notes. Because I want to write timeless pieces. Pieces that when you pick up in 20, 40 years, information is still relevant.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
You said you did Kickstarter. Talk us through your Kickstarter process.
So again, when all the things that you've just mentioned, like I had no concept of any of that when I first started, and I didn't even really go the route of sending my book to any traditional publishers. I didn't do that. I was writing, and then I decided I'm going to do it, and then somebody said, "Well, you could self-publish. You could do this on your own." I said, "Okay, let me try it."
Okay.
So I didn't know what Kickstarters were until I actually started to do my book and, trying to find an illustrator and all different things. And people said, you should do a Kickstarter. And I was like, what is a Kickstarter? And I'm searching online, what is a Kickstarter? And then it was really hard. And I thought, okay, I'm going to try and do that. But it was hard because, you don't want to ask for help. It's really hard sometimes to ask people. I didn't want to feel like I'm begging people for money or anything like that. That was something I had to really deal with. And everyone was like, no, it's, they get something in return. They get a book, they get an early release of it, and you get lots of other things. So I did do an activity guide. I did do an activity book. I did do a teacher's guide, a discussion guide. And so they were able to get all of that. And the Kickstarter was phenomenal. It was a lot of work to prepare for it. And I depended on a lot of other people who had done successful Kickstarters to tell me what to do and show me what to do. But I funded in 72 hours, and which was phenomenal. And then it was my Kickstarter time period was for 21 days. And I funded in 72 hours, and then I was like, okay, that's it, I'm done. Even though I probably could have done more, but it was just so much putting yourself out there, and you're on social media all the time talking about your book, encouraging people to join the Kickstarter. But it did tell me that people wanted books like this. People wanted to read books with characters that have different experiences that they haven't seen about before, and there was such a market for it and a need for it that I was really excited about that. And like I said, I'm an educator, and I've had some teachers in the schools who've done whole class lessons on some of my books. One school did Carnival Girl. This year they did a carnival theme, and they brought in, I did a book reading for them, and the kids made their own carnival costumes, and we brought in a steel pen player, and it was just real. Like, none of these children would have I don't know that any of them knew or had heard a carnival before and knew what happened, but this was such an experience that took so much of my time in my life, because my parents were very heavily involved in it every year. And whether it was, we'd go back to Trinidad for a carnival, and in the Caravana Parade in Toronto. So it was always like, it's either carnival time or you're preparing for carnival or you're getting ready for carnival again next year. So that was so important to me. And yet I know that for so many people, they would not even know anything about it, but yet it was such a big part. And I remember as a child, when you come back to school and the teacher says, oh, write about your summer, and I would want to write about that. And I didn't, because I thought no one would know about it. People kept talking about going to the cottage and all kinds of things. And, you feel, I can't say that, no one's going to know. I have too much explanation to explain what it is. And, people hear a parade and they think Santa Claus parade, and they don't understand that, no, in this parade, you're actually part of the parade, and you're not just standing back and watching and things like that. So that was really good for me to be able to do that and see the response to that. So I was really happy that I got the Kickstarter going, and I was able to, through the funds that I got there, because we met our goal quickly, that additional funds, I said that I would be able to do the second book and do the illustrations for the second book. So
wow, that's great. I still haven't had the courage to do a Kickstarter. I still have the draft. I was going to do a Kickstarter for my first book. I chickened out, in the end. I thought I would do it for my second book. Same thing. I don't know if I'll have the courage to do that, because I just feel I don't know enough people. I was feeling the exact same thing. Like, it was really I think I almost came to a point where, like, okay, I want to get this out. I don't have the funds, because, like you said, illustration costs are a lot, especially if you want quality illustrations, right? You want a good illustrator, and there's so many other costs associated with it, right? That I didn't even know about. So even the editing costs, the revisions cost, and then making all the other materials, the activity books and all those things. So all of that cost. And so I thought, okay, I'm just going to do it. And I almost like buried my head in the sand. Like, okay, I'm doing it. I think I was in bed the whole day. It was good the first day because I couldn't, because I didn't know what was going to happen. And I told everyone, I don't want to see, don't tell me how it's going. I'm just going to go out there and do it. I'm putting myself out there. So I was so happy that I did, like I said, I funded quite quickly. And then I was like, okay, I can retreat again. I don't have to do it. So if I can encourage you that, you probably, it's not even so much about how many people you know, but it's about the kind of stories that you're writing that will resonate with people. And, you just have to do a lot of social media posts and things so people know about it, but they will really resonate with the stories, and people are looking for that. They're looking for different things. I know, I have teachers coming to me all the time looking for, do you have any other books? Do you know any other books that we can bring into the classroom? And because I've been in the author community now, have bought books for my teachers, have bought books for the classroom that you're not going to get in the list that goes out usually for students to buy books. These are books that people would never see, they don't hear about, they might not even be in the bookstores. So I would encourage you to just go ahead and try. And I only get people reaching out to me to say, oh, we came across your book online and we've added it to our school list, and I'm like, oh, okay, thank you. I don't know. So how important, because I was going to ask you to give us tips for successful Kickstarters.
Yes.
But I think that I'll leave that till the end of our conversation.
Okay.
How important do you think it is for children, for us to tell diverse stories? Because Carnival, for me, when I saw Carnival Girl, I think I had seen you online and I had followed you maybe last year or so.
Okay.
Yeah, but when I saw Carnival Girl, my thought about Carnival, I never related it to children. Because when people talk about Carnival, oh, we're going for the parade, the first question I asked when I first saw it was, why don't they have any clothes on? What's it with that? But this is the first time now that I am actually relating it to say, oh, okay, kids can also take part in this.
Yeah.
So how important do you think it is for us to tell, as authors, to tell diverse stories? How important do you think it is for us also to talk about some of our cultural practices? Because Carnival is a Caribbean tradition. I know that it stemmed, I don't know, I think it has, I want to believe it has its origin from the motherland.
Yes, yeah.
But how important do you think it is for us to tell stories that celebrate our unique cultures?
Well, I think it's, our kids and deserve to see themselves represented in books. They deserve to pick up a book that's a favorite and identify with it in some way, whether it's through the experience, whether through the characters, and like I said, characters that have depth and that are well nuanced, and not just a figure that's colored in brown. But have the same feelings and emotions that any other child has. And when you don't see that, you stop believing or thinking or understanding that you are important, and that what you go through and what you experience is valuable. You start to think that it's all about somebody else and it's not about me. I'm not important enough. And then when you see something that reflects your culture, it makes you feel like my culture is good, right? There's so many negative stereotypes and negative beliefs that are out there about people of color, about Black people, about people from the African continent, for people from the Caribbean. There's so many things that kids have to go through every day in terms of dealing with that blockage and still feeling like, you know what, I'm a good person. I come from a great family, and we have traditions that are just as important as what somebody else celebrates. I heard it growing up in school more about St. Patrick's Day. It meant nothing to me. I don't know anything about that, but because that was talked about at school, and every year it was like, oh, it's St. Patrick's Day and we have green. I don't know anything about it, and shamrocks and things like that. But yet, when I think about Carnival and its roots in terms of emancipation and a celebration of Caribbean and African culture, that's not something that you hear about. And I think that kids need that to hear about it, and because they'll know what it is. And there are carnivals all across the world, and not just, Trinidad is one of the bigger ones, but there are carnivals that have their roots in Brazil, in the States. They have them in different places, in Atlanta, in New York, in Miami, and they're really big. And the fact that people from Caribbean islands and have been able to move, right, at a time when it was not easy to leave their countries and we're able to come together as a community and say, this was important to us, right? This was important to us back home, and here we are, and we're small, and it's a small community, but we're going to keep some of those traditions going. And I think that that's a really a big piece of the experience of Black people, I think, is that so much of our culture and so much of our heritage has been lost in the storytelling in some ways, that it hasn't necessarily been passed down from generation to generation all the time. And so the fact that people were able to still come together and do that, and still bring those stories and still bring those traditions, that's a wonderful thing. I remember when my kids were younger, as part of the Caravana celebrations, they had a workshop for kids on how to write calypsos, and my kids were part of that, and doing it, and it was just such a great thing, because it's not something you're going to learn in school, but it's just part of their culture, part of their heritage, and that they had the opportunity to sort of get that. So I think that when kids don't see that, when they don't feel that they are seen, it's just like going to a movie and you just, none of the characters live a life that you live, or you could even imagine yourself in that, right? Because it's not always about it's exactly what we do, but we want our kids to be able to see, hey, I can do this, I can do the other thing, I can be somebody big. I don't have to, like I said, I don't have to lead a whole march across America, but I can still be a really successful person. I could still be a really positive person. So having more books and resources that let kids know that they are important is like high on my list in terms of things that they want to do, especially as an educator. I want to make sure that when I'm bringing things into the classroom, when I'm bringing things into the therapy room, that they reflect students. I met an author as part of my journey who had written a story about her daughter, and she is deaf and hard of hearing, and has hearing aids, and she did a Kickstarter around the same time as me. And I was so excited to buy her book, and I bought them in a bulk purchase of her book for my classrooms, because I manage a deaf and hard of hearing department at work. And I thought, I want my teachers, when they're going out to see these kids, that they have something that those kids can say, hey, you know, this is me. I identify with them, because they wouldn't find that any other way. They weren't out there. And now you're seeing a little more of it, but at the time there wasn't. And it's so important for the kids to see that. The first book that I did, A Doll for Me, this one, it a story about a girl, Molly Morningstar, is going to a birthday party, and everyone's asked to bring their favorite doll, and she can't find one because none of them looked like her, and none of them really represented her. So she goes on this quest to figure out how to find the doll. And when one of the classes at the school, it was a class of students who are deaf and hard of hearing, they read the story and then they made their own dolls. And then they put cochlear implants on the dolls when they made them, right? And they put headbands for the hearing assistive technology. So it had nothing to do with skin color or anything like that. But for them, it was, again, it's so important for them to see themselves in something. And they were so excited to make their dolls and show me them, because they don't get to see it. And I think that for all kids, that's a universal piece, right? We want kids to grow up feeling strong, loved, to feel that they are important. And that happens when we make sure that we celebrate who they are at all times, not just once month a year, not just bringing it out 1 month a year, because then it means that it tells them that they're not that important. We just have to do it at that time, and then we put the books away. No, let those books be out there, and not just for our kids, but so important for other children to see that, you know what, this Black child, this Black boy, this Black girl, they are strong, they're intelligent, they do the same things I do, they can make a difference, and they are heroes. And I think they need to see that too, and they need to see those experiences, or else they only know St. Patrick's Day and don't know that there are other things that are happening, right, in the world around them. And it's a great way for kids to sort of develop that empathy and that understanding of other cultures. And when I think about, the immigrant experience and families coming, it's so powerful when you think about how difficult is it, right? Like even though I'm from Trinidad, I came to Canada early with my family, but they made such sacrifices in leaving their family to come here and to set up shop, let's say, and be successful in the midst of whatever things that were happening then. When I was going to school, there were only 2 Black families in my school. And yet when my kids were going to school, it was much different. But that's a hard thing to sort of go through, and we don't give credit to that. So I love reading stories now about people who have come from different parts, and knowing what they experience and what makes them who they are and makes them unique, and learning from that. Right? It's all about the learning for kids, because the more that we are exposed to some of those things and some of those differences, the better we are, or better our kids are, to able to really recognize the value in people, in other people, and deal with a lot of the issues that we deal with in terms of the discrimination and the racism and the sense that one group is better than another, and not recognizing the value that people bring. That you might look at them as just as an immigrant coming, but hey, these are powerful people that are strong, that are resilient, that are broken, that are all of the things that we all are. And here they are, and they've got a story to tell, and I want to hear that story, and I think kids want to hear those stories. So
yeah. So you said that the book you bought, where you said the lady had written about her daughter who had a hearing, is that Mighty Mila?
Yes, it is. Yes,
okay,
it is.
Yes, because I know I read that book too.
Yes. So the author of that book, Katie, she and I had done a course online at one point while I was starting to write, and I didn't know what I was doing. And my kids were trying to figure out what to get me for Christmas. And I said, you know what? I saw that there's this course there. It's 12 weeks to write your children's book. And I said, nobody can write a children's book in 12 weeks, right? But the person who was doing it offered some coaching sessions as part of it. And I said, you know what, for the money that she's charging, just the coaching sessions itself would be good for me, because then I could ask specific questions about the journey that I was already on with writing. So I did it, and that's where I met Katie. And so we were doing the course at the same time. And and I loved her story, and I thought, I'm getting that for my staff. And I had occasion to be, my husband's family is from New York and she's in the States. And so we did get a chance to meet up, and that was really nice.
So what are some of the challenges you think diverse authors experience when trying to collaborate with fellow diverse authors or trying to put our books out there? What are some of the challenges?
Yeah, I think some of it unfortunately has been that sort of competition, feeling that we're competing against each other, and we're not, because there are a million books out there about Santa Claus, like a million. Every year there's a new book about Santa Claus, and people don't feel like, oh, well, there's already a book there. But I had somebody say to me, oh, I think there's a book already about Carnival, and I didn't know about it. And I was like so devastated. And I thought, why should I be? Because it's not even going to be the same story as mine. And it doesn't matter if there are two books. It's great that there are two books, or there's three books, or there's more. And, and I think that we need to have that mindset that the more that there is out there, the more people have variety. That's why I like to talk about not having a diverse book, but having a diverse collection of books, right? So I could have 2 or 3 stories about Santa Claus, but I could also have 2 or 3 books about Carnival. And I could have 2 or 3 books about the African experience. I could have 2 or 3 books about lots of different things, because it's not just about that one story or that one voice. So that's been a big piece. I do find, there are some people who have been very helpful and really supportive, and even people like you, like just trying to give voice and give space for other authors to share their work. And for many of us, we're already working against a system that would try to keep us at bay. I find even in the indie author group, there is a bit of a division in terms of what's happening with white authors and how that people might promote each other, and not so much for other authors, and people trying to shy away from that and things like that. So you really have to know what you're about and really stand firm in terms of like, okay, there's a space for me and I'm occupying my space. And that's okay I'm occupying my space. And I try to make sure that anybody coming up that I know who needs help, I've been able to sort of direct them and help them and say, listen, I'll help you out. If I see something great, I'm going to get your book. I'm going to share your book someplace else, because I think that there is space for all of us, right?
Yeah. So how do you think we can support each other?
I think we just need to start to really think about what would have helped you, right? Having somebody sort of guide me, having somebody help open a door for me was helpful. So I could turn around and do that for somebody else. If we just keep trying to have that mindset, if I can do that good deed for somebody else, then that's a positive. They talk about each other's books. It's okay to talk about each other's books. It's okay to share them, buy each other's books, encourage other people to buy it. Like if I see a good book, to be able to say, hey, this author has written this. It may not be my book, but I can still talk about it. I can still share it with other people. And I'm blessed in the way that because I'm in education, that I do have the opportunity to bring some into the classroom. And I really try and do that and make sure that, in that sense, that's where I have a little bit of influence, that I can do that. But if we all do that with the influence that we have, it'll make such a difference, and not feel that you have to do this alone, because that's been the pattern to keep people like us from actually flourishing and for actually growing, right? Keep us all separated and everyone doing their own thing, but collectively we can do so much more when we're supporting each other. And we're seeing this as something that's positive, that helps our community, that's bettering our community. It's not a one-man show. There's a lot of space, a lot of families, a lot of kids to read.
And I like that you said buy each other's books. Because back in the day, I would give complimentary copies.
Yeah.
I noticed that when people don't spend money on stuff, they
don't appreciate it. No.
Someone said to me, "Oh, the other day I was cleaning out my garage and I came across your book." I didn't even read it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
I learned that early on. I thought giving it away for free, and I wanted to, because I wanted people to have the book, and I was happy to, I had done the Kickstarter, I had free copies, but
now I don't anymore. What I say is, you're having a party, buy, get copies of the books. It will help.
It's okay.
And okay, question 1.
I can start with that. Yeah.
Give us tips for a successful Kickstarter. Question 2, how can authors get their books into schools?
Okay. Yes. So the Kickstarter, I would say one of the first things that I did was support another Kickstarter. Go online, set up an account, and support another Kickstarter, and see firsthand the process, because you'll see from the beginning to the end the kind of stages that they go through in terms of getting that Kickstarter going. A Kickstarter really is, the campaign is about creating sort of a short video, and it's about a 30-second video, because they show the stats that people don't watch longer than that. That just really, why would anyone want to buy your book? Like, what's different about what you're writing or what your book is about that is missing, that people need to know? And that's the biggest thing, is to sort of find that why, that you can sort of in 30 seconds say what it is. And then after that, it's really, you're just putting a description of what the book is about, and then deciding on what kind of rewards you would give people. So in your case, if you were doing it for one of your other books, it might be, they get a copy of the book, or an e-version of the book, an e-copy, or the lesson plan and things like that. You want to be careful about adding too many things. Like some people do t-shirts and mugs and things like that, but shipping those is ridiculous, right? So I did stickers because they were easy to put in the book. And of course the activity book and things like that. So those are, and I offered also to do virtual readings at schools. And so those are the sort of the big pieces about a Kickstarter. But I think the biggest thing is maybe look at a couple of other campaigns and support them. Find one that's just starting, that you kind of like the book, and support it and watch how they sort of go through it. And then the other pieces are really thinking about that video and thinking about that why your book, like in the midst of all the other things, because people don't really go looking on Kickstarter for a book. When a family's looking for a book, they're not going on Kickstarter. It's just that once they've heard, for people who hear about it, it's usually other authors. And then you can talk about it, because that was one piece that you had to I had to let people know how to get on Kickstarter, how to sign up for it, because a lot of people don't necessarily know about that.
Okay.
And then to your other question about getting into schools, it's different for every school board and for every place. And I think the easiest way, schools operate like I don't even know how to say it, but if you can get into one class with one teacher, the word spreads. That's probably the easiest way, because there are people that might call like the school board office and try to find somebody who's in charge of buying books, but it doesn't really work like that. Like, there are librarians who buy books, but there are also teachers who buy books. Teachers have funds to buy books. There are principals that have funds to buy books, right? There are department heads like me who have funds to buy books. So it can come in a number of different ways, and it's different for every school board. And I find that the easiest thing to do sometimes is just to even make that one connection with somebody, maybe if it's your local school. If you don't necessarily have kids that are in school or anything like that, find your local school and say, hey, I'm a local author. I would be happy to come and do a book reading for a class. I could do a virtual one, or I could come and do a book reading, and you could have some of your activity books there and take out have a few sheets that they can do a coloring activity or something that's related to the book, because teachers love that kind of thing. Like, that's a whole lesson. They love that. If you could come and do all of that for me, so that I don't have to do it, that's excellent. And because your stuff is, there's such a teaching component to it, that's really excellent. So just think about the sort of the age group that would best fit in. And I would start, like, if you don't know somebody, a teacher or somebody that you can connect with, then I would start with going to your local school and say, hey, I'm local. I'd be happy to do this, and walk in and ask to speak to the principal, and they'd be more than happy. They'd say, you know what, I've got a grade 4 teacher, she'd love this, and put you on to the.
So for free, yeah. So we start off for free, right?
I did. I mean, I know that some people say they started charging right away, and they charge a lot of money, but I started it for free because I thought I wanted to get my name out there. I wanted to get my books out there. So it wasn't a lot for me to read my book, right? Like, it's not like a hard skill that I had to learn to read my book and to be really interactive with the kids and things like that. But what I did then is had them buy a number of books. So the first time I went, I did the reading. I didn't make them buy anything, and they did. I brought books and I had them in my car. And the teachers were like, can we get copies of your books? Can we buy your books? And the librarian wanted to buy them. I said, hold on a second, went to my car, brought them out, and sold them. So I didn't do it ahead of time.
Yeah, so I don't have copies because I would have to get them off Amazon or Ingram Spark. And that's the thing, because that was why I was afraid to do Kickstarter, because I didn't want to have like 1,000 books in my apartment. So
I did it I was concerned about that, and I didn't do the biggest run. I don't even remember how many books I did. And people were like, no, you need to do like 10,000. It's like, it'll cost you 10 cents a book. And I'm like, I don't have a basement big enough for 10,000 books. So I didn't do that. So I did a smaller run. So for my first book, I did the Kickstarter, and I loved it. And because the pages are just like phenomenal in terms of just getting that printed and things like that. So what do I do for the other books? I do them off Amazon. So this is the hardcover of Carnival Girl. The pages are not as glossy or anything like that, but I buy the author copies, right? And send the author copies to me, and then I sell them. So when I go to a book fair and things like that, this is the only one that I have in hardcover. I don't really sell the hardcover at book fairs because it's just way more expensive.
Yeah.
So I buy the soft covers. I buy them in bulk at different times, and then when I sell them off and run out, then I buy another. I'll order another 50 or 100, and then go to some festivals and things like that, and try and sell them.
What are some tips you can give for a successful school visit?
Really think about the same way that when you were thinking about your writing and you think you're writing for kids, think about the things that interest kids. Thinking about being really interactive, and not thinking that you need to be too serious with them, right? Come in just very relaxed, and because kids respond to that, and make it fun for them. We're going to read a fun story. They get stories all the time. They're used to it, right? So it's a fun story. Be really interactive, ask lots of questions. Kids love answering questions, and they love telling you, like, oh, I had $1 million when I was growing up, and then the next one, no, I had $10 million growing up, and those kind of things, right? They really love that interactive piece, and I like to usually do an activity that sort of ties it together. Something that they can, to have some of those conversations and things like that. It's and I know because my background is in education, I know for other people who have not been in front of kids, it seems really, but the same way that you said to me, like, we're just having a conversation with a friend, it's the same thing. They're just little friends.
Yeah,
but you're going in.
I know I taught in Nigeria, but I know that the kids here are a bit different. In Nigeria, the kids are more respectful, they are more laid back. Here, kids are more outspoken.
They are.
Yeah, so it's a little bit of, so I always like to get those tips, because when people listen in, they like to ask. Yeah. So what would you like to see for your books? Yeah, what would you like to see for your books?
I would like to see them in the hands of lots of kids, that they enjoy the story, that they look for the next book because this character, Molly Morningstar, it's a 6-book series. So Carnival Girl's the second book, and Molly on Ice is Molly on Ice is the third book. Okay. And so I have the 4th book coming. And I used to, when I read books when I was young, I liked the character, and I would wait for the next book in the series, right? So I want kids to be able to see that they feel that they can relate to this character, that she's fun, that she is somebody that they can look up to, and that they want to hear more about her life, and they want to enjoy more of the things that she does. So that's my goal. That's my hope.
Okay, are you working on anything new?
I am. I'm working on the 4th book in the series, and my illustrator, who is phenomenal, she's from Guatemala, is and Fernando Orozco. She is working on the illustrations, and like you said, they take a long time. I was naive before, and I thought, oh, I have these 6 stories, I could get it all done in a year. You know, it just takes you. I've written them, and no, it takes long, and I've learned to not try to push that faster than needs to be. I'm like, you take your time, because when you take your time, I get phenomenal pictures that just wow me.
I love, you know, I love the colors. I love,
She just captured my vision and what I experienced, and I could just see it on the page and the expressions and everything.
So I'd like you to read this book to us before we let you go.
Okay. Carnival Girl. Molly Morningstar, Carnival Girl. And I dedicated this book to my father, who showed me the importance of being rooted in family and culture. So, okay. Today is the day I've been waiting for, shouts Molly Morningstar. I can't wait to go to Kitty Carnival Parade. Every year, Molly and her parents head to the city to celebrate the big Caribbean cultural festival. Dancing in the parade is Molly's favorite thing to do. Molly carefully puts on her costume. For this special day, Molly chose the grandest, most sparkling, most gigantic outfit she could find. She carefully places the glittery crown on her head. These bright pink feathers add just the right touch, Molly says to her mom. There's a prize for the best costume, and I plan to win. As the entire family piles into the streetcar, Molly and Boomer sit in a row by themselves. Molly's costume is so big and so grand that there's no room for anyone else. Soon the driver calls out, Kitty Carnival Parade, next stop. Oh no, Molly cries as she steps down from the streetcar. I lost a feather. My costume is wrecked. How will I win? Don't worry. It's just one silly feather, Papa says. You still have 2 feathers, and your costume is still a showstopper, kiddo. Molly and her parents weave past birds, fairies, and pirates. There they are, Molly shrieks as she sees her friend Emma chatting with other friends. Molly gazes at the crowd. All her friends and neighbors are here. Their masks and outfits are beautiful, but Molly is sure hers is the best. Mama gives Molly a bear hug. Have fun, Molly Morningstar. Papa gives her a little flag. Wave your flag, Molly Morningstar. The band leader hands Molly a whistle. Make some noise, Molly Morningstar. Mama and Papa watch from the sidewalk as the parade begins. Children prance and dance in the street. The musical sound of the steel drums floats in the air, reminding everyone of the beautiful Caribbean islands. Boomer twirls, Emma dances, children walk, babies ride, and Molly Morningstar dances along, singing as loud as she can. I'm in the Kitty Parade. This is the place to be. I'll win the prize for my costume. Just you wait and see. Molly and Emma take a picture with a peacock. They munch treats from the food carts. What fun! Look, an ice cream truck, shouts Molly. But as she races to the truck, whack! A big green dragon bumps into her, almost knocking her down. Sorry, shouts the dragon as he disappears into the crowd. Molly tries to hold on to her crown, Boomer's leash, and her ice cream cone all at the same time. Oh no! I lost another feather, she squeals. Now what? My costume, the prize. How will I win? Don't worry. You still have 1 feather left, says Emma. You can still win. I love this scene. Suddenly, Molly feels a splash on her head. Then another. Then rain is pouring down. Molly's last feather flops to the ground. I won't win now, Molly sobs, as tears and raindrops run down her face and onto her beautiful costume. But the band leader shouts, "Jump up, everyone! Keep dancing! Rain or shine, the fun goes on!" Molly wipes the tears from her eyes as she looks around. Feathers and masks are all over the ground. Glitter is running down kids' faces, but everyone is still laughing and dancing. "Emma," Molly says, "doesn't matter if my costume is wet and soggy and all my feathers are gone. I can still have fun, even if I don't win the best costume award." So Molly blows her whistle, waves her flag, and continues to dance. And Molly has the best time ever. That night, as Papa tucks Molly into bed, he says, "I'm sorry you didn't win the prize." "That's okay," says Molly. "There's always next year." Molly Morningstar is already imagining an even grander costume. The end.
Thank you so much, Andrea. I wish we had time.
I know, we could talk forever. Yes, like that. So I think we've got lots to talk about. So thank you so much for having me here today.
All right. So thank you so
much. Thank you.
All right.
You
bye-bye.
too. Thank you for having me. Okay.
All right,
bye-bye. God bless.